You've seen headlines: Muslim-majority countries staging elections and passing constitutions, yet debates rage over Sharia's compatibility with universal suffrage. Can democratic principles, liberty, equality, accountability, find firm ground in an Islamic framework? Or does the sovereignty of God clash with the will of the people? I'm Fakir Al-Kamosh. In this 8-part series, we'll trace the theological roots of political authority, survey modern experiments in Muslim democracies, and confront the tensions and promises of Islam's democratic journey. Divine sovereignty, Hakimiyya. Quranic basis, verses such as, "To Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth," 3:189, affirm God as ultimate legislator. Classical jurists held that only Allah's law is binding. Human rulers implement rather than originate law. Consultation, shūrā, prophetic practice. The Prophet consulted companions on military and administrative matters, establishing shūrā as a model of collective deliberation, though not a formal election. Early caliphs, Abu Bakr's selection at Saqifah, and subsequent pledges combined elements of consensus, ijma, and elite consultation, prefiguring republican theory, but within a divine law framework. Limits of ijaza jurisdiction of rulers. Classical treatises defined the caliph's role as protecting faith and community, darurat. They could not contravene fixed legal mandates, thawabit, but could legislate in public interest, maslahah matters. Central to the Islam democracy debate is the question, who truly holds sovereignty? Let's explore the two poles of this contention. Hakimiyya al-ilahiyya, divine rule. Absolute legislation. Classical jurists asserted that only God may legislate binding law. Any human enactment cannot contradict the Quran or Sunnah. They classified legal rulings into fixed, thawabit, and discretionary, mutagayyirat categories, leaving the latter to rulers' judgments under maslahah, public interest. Guardianship model. Some medieval thinkers proposed that qualified scholars, ulama, safeguard divine law, advising or constraining rulers to prevent unlawful innovations. This scholarly guardianship underscores fear of unchecked majorities enacting un-Islamic policies. Shūrā and proto-democratic elements, consultative assembly, the Prophet's consultations with the companions, e.g. at Hudaybiyah, exemplify an early deliberative process, though participants were chosen, not elected. Ijma, consensus. Later jurists elevated communal consensus, ijma, as a source of law. If the entire community agreed on a new measure that did not conflict with sacred texts, it acquired legitimacy. Limits. Consensus was hard to achieve. Ijma normally applied only to doctrinal rulings, not to everyday legislation or executive leadership. Medieval voices on popular, say, Ibn Khaldun, D. 808/1406, argued that governance requires odd contract between ruler and ruled, anticipating a social contract idea. Legitimacy depends on public consent to leadership, provided rulers uphold justice. Al-Maward died. 450/1058, maintained that the caliph should be chosen from among the Quraysh through shūrā of leading notables, introducing an elective element tempered by tribal and scholarly vetting. Modernist reappraisals. Muhammad Abduh reinterpreted shūrā as a basis for representative institutions. He envisioned consultative councils elected by the people acting within Quranic guardrails. Hassan al-Banna and later thinkers saw shūrā as extensible to full democratic systems, parliaments accountable to voters, yet bound by a constitutional declaration affirming Sharia as supreme. After gaining independence, several Muslim-majority states experimented with constitutions blending Sharia and popular rule. Let's examine three emblematic cases: Egypt, 1956, Tunisia, 1959, and Pakistan, 1973, to understand their designs, achievements, and pitfalls. Egypt, 1956 Constitution. Background: following the 1952 Free Officers' coup, Gamal Abdel Nasser's regime sought legitimacy by fusing Arab nationalism with Islamic identity. Constitutional features. Article 2. Islam is the religion of the state. The principles of Sharia are a principal source of legislation. Parliamentary elections. Multi-party chamber elected by universal male suffrage. Women's suffrage introduced in 1956. Shūrā Council, advisory body of appointed religious scholars to vet legislation for Sharia compliance. Outcomes and challenges. Modernization. Drive, land reform and social services expanded, often with religious sanction. Authoritarian. Turn, Nasser's suppression of parties and press, curtailed genuine democratic deliberation, subordinating shūrā to state ideology. Tunisia, 1959 Constitution. Background: under President Habib Bourguiba, Tunisia adopted a civil-oriented constitution but maintained Islamic references to placate conservatives. Constitutional features. Article 1. Republic of Tunisia is a state of law, independent, free, and sovereign. Islam is its religion. Secular legal codes. Personal status laws granted Tunisian women unprecedented rights in marriage, divorce, and inheritance, explicitly justified by maqasid of justice. Elected assembly, multi-party parliament with guaranteed representation for rural and urban districts. Outcomes and challenges. Progressive reforms. Education and women's rights flourished, creating a model for moderate Islam. Democratic deficit. Single-party dominance and emergency laws limited political pluralism until the 2011 revolution. Pakistan, 1973 Constitution. Background: founded in 1947 as a homeland for South Asian Muslims, Pakistan wrestled with identity debates, secular nationalism versus Islamic State. Constitutional features. Preamble: sovereignty over the entire universe belongs to Allah alone. Article 2. Islam shall be the state religion. Article 2, 127. All laws to conform with Quran and Sunnah. Parliamentary system. Bicameral legislature with National Assembly elected by adult suffrage. Council of Islamic Ideology to review bills. Outcomes and challenges. Islamization. Waves. Under Zia-ul-Haq, 1977-88, blasphemy laws and hudud ordinances inserted, skewing democratic institutions toward conservative clergy. Political volatility, military coups, judicial interventions, and religious parties' influence have repeatedly undermined parliament's autonomy. Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority democracy, offers a model of pluralism under the foundational principle of Pancasila, belief in one God plus national unity, social justice, and democracy. Let's see how Islamic parties operate within this framework. Pancasila's 5 pillars, Ketuhanan, Yang Maha Esa, belief in one God, anchors Islam alongside other faiths. It grants religious freedom while binding all parties to a shared national ideology. Gotong royong, mutual cooperation, and Kedaulatan Rakyat, popular sovereignty, institutionalize consensus. Legislative coalitions must build broad-based support across ethnic and religious lines. Major Islamic parties, Partai Kebangkitan Bangsa, PKB, rooted in Nahdlatul Ulama, NU, balances traditionalist Islam with moderate nationalism, advocating social welfare, rural development, and interfaith harmony. Partai Keadilan Sejahtera, PKS, inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood, pushes for moral governance and selective implementation of Sharia-based bylaws, but often aligns with secular parties to secure legislative influence. Partai Persatuan Pembangunan, PPP, carries the legacy of the old Masyumi Party. Positioned center-right, it champions Islamic education while accepting pluralistic coalitions. Coalition politics and power-sharing cabinet and legislation, no party ever wins an outright majority. Islamic parties join broad coalitions, e.g., PKB and PKS, both served in President Joko Widodo's cabinets, securing ministerial portfolios in exchange for support on social development agendas. Local Sharia bylaws, Perda Sharia, regional legislatures in Aceh, West Sumatra, and Banten enact local regulations on zakat collection, alcohol prohibition, and dress codes, subject to review by the Ministry of Home Affairs to ensure consistency with national law. Role of the Indonesian Ulama Council, MUI, Fatwa Authority. MUI issues non-binding fatwas on issues like halal certification, financial ethics, and medical procedures. Parliament often uses MUI opinions to draft legislation, lending religious legitimacy to secular laws. Check on extremism. MUI condemns radical groups. Its fatwas delegitimize ISIS sympathizers and curb Takfarist rhetoric, working in tandem with counterterrorism agencies. Challenges and tensions, clientelism versus conscience. Islamic parties sometimes trade votes for development projects, undermining principled policy debates. Identity politics. Campaigns around Khilafah slogans by fringe groups test Pancasila's inclusivity, prompting security crackdowns and MUI fatwas against unconstitutional ideologies. Judicial oversight. Constitutional court interventions balance local Sharia bylaws with national human rights commitments, preventing overreach while accommodating regional autonomy. Malaysia practices a form of consociational democracy, power sharing among ethnic Malays, Chinese, and Indians, with Islam as the state religion. Islamic parties wield influence within a multi-ethnic coalition government. Federal Constitutional Framework, Article 3. Islam is the religion of the Federation, but other faiths enjoy freedom of worship. The Yang di Pertuan Agong, king, serves as head of Islam, while Sharia courts adjudicate personal status matters for Muslims. Bicameral legislature, Dewan Rakyat, elected house, drafts secular law. Dewan Negara, Senate, reviews bills. Sharia courts operate parallel to civil courts, constrained to family law and religious offenses. Islamic parties in coalition Parti Islam Se Malaysia, PAS, advocates for gradual implementation of hudud, Quranic penal, laws in Kelantan and Terengganu while collaborating with larger coalitions, Barisan Nasional, then Perikatan Nasional, to secure federal influence. United Malay's national organization, UMNO, though secular nationalist, frames itself as protector of Malay Muslim rights, often adopting PAS positions to retain electoral support. Sharia chambers and federal-state dynamics. State jurisdiction. Each of Malaysia's 13 states manages its own Sharia court system. Federal laws govern criminal, commercial, and constitutional matters. Hudud attempts. Kelantan and Terengganu passed hudud bills in 1993 and 2015, respectively, but federal parliament and the King's consent are required to bring these into force, preventing unilateral enactment. National Fatwa Council and Joachim National Fatwa Council. Chaired by the Prime Minister, it issues binding fatwas on matters ranging from cosmetic surgery to financial products. Parliament often incorporates these into amendments of the Penal Code or banking regulations. Department of Islamic Development, Joachim, coordinates religious education, halal certification, and mosque administration, ensuring uniform implementation of fatwas and religious policies across states. Balancing pluralism and Islamic identity, ethnic and religious tensions, PAS's push for expanded Sharia enforcement in mixed urban areas sparks pushback from non-Muslim communities and civil society groups, leading to negotiated compromises and judicial reviews. Consociational safeguards, bargain politics among UMNO, PAS, and non-Muslim parties in coalitions ensures that contentious Islamic policies are moderated through mutual vetoes and negotiated policy packages. Turkey presents a unique fusion, a republic founded on secularist Kemalism, yet with a steadily rising role for political Islam. Observe how democratic institutions, presidential power, and religious agencies interact. Founding principles. Kemalism's 6 arrows: secularism, laiklik, republicanism, nationalism, populism, statism, and reformism anchored the 1924 Constitution. Islam was relegated to private life. The Directorate of Religious Affairs, Diyanet, served state-sanctioned theology. Diyanet's role: oversees imams in 85,000 state mosques, publishes Friday sermons, and manages religious education, ensuring uniform, government-approved interpretations. Rise of political Islam. Democratic opening. Multi-party politics, since 1946, allowed parties like the welfare party Refah to gain urban support in the 1990s, advocating for increased religious visibility. AKP era, the Justice and Development Party, AKP, under Erdogan, combined conservative values with economic growth. It curbed Diyanet independence, expanded its budget, and used state mosques for outreach, mobilizing voters through religious networks. Checks and balances, Parliament versus President. The 2017 referendum shifted Turkey from a parliamentary to a presidential system, concentrating power in the presidency while maintaining elections and party competition. Judiciary and military. Historically guardians of secularism, both were weakened after the 2016 coup attempt. The government restructured courts and purged military commanders, reducing institutional checks on Islamic-leaning policies. Local Sharia initiatives, municipal regulations. Some AKP-led municipalities promote halal zoning, controlling liquor licenses, encouraging Quran classes in public parks, and subsidizing mosque construction. These measures are justified through local bylaws under general public morality clauses, but face legal challenges in administrative courts. Civil society and opposition, religious minorities. Alevi and non-Muslim communities protest standardized Sunni sermons demanding plural religious curricula. Opposition parties, secular CHP and pro-Kurdish HDP, criticize the use of Diyanet for political ends, proposing to decentralize religious affairs and protect communal autonomy. Tunisia's trajectory from Bourguiba's staunch secularism to Ennahda's democratic participation, illustrates the ebb and flow between secular and Islamic currents in a fledgling democracy. Bourguiba's Legacy Code of Personal Status, 1956. Pioneering reforms granted women equal divorce and custody rights, banned polygyny, and instituted state-run mosques under the Ministry of Religious Affairs. Religion was tightly controlled. Constitutional secularism. Articles emphasized equality and modernity, while Article 1 affirmed Islam as the religion of the state, reflecting a compromise to mollify religious sentiment. Post-revolution realignment. Ennahda movement. After 2011, Ennahda transformed from a Muslim Brotherhood offshoot into a Muslim Democratic Party, accepting the republic's pluralism while advocating moral governance. 2014 Constitution pledged Tunisia as a civil state based on citizenship, the will of the people, and the guarantee of rights. Article 1, while again naming Islam as the state religion. Article 3, balancing faith and democracy. Power sharing and governance. Troika government. 2012-14. Ennahda governed in coalition with secular parties, steering a transitional period that produced stable elections but faced protests over unemployment and social policy. Caretaker compromise. In 2014, Ennahda ceded the presidency to secularists, preserving its party strength while upholding democratic norms, a pragmatic win-win that diffused polarization. Role of ulama and fatwa councils, Higher Islamic Council, an advisory body issuing non-binding opinions on contemporary issues, finance, bioethics, education, whose views are often referenced in parliamentary debates. Local imams and grassroots, independent mosque leaders organized community dialogues on democracy, encouraging voter turnout and countering radical narratives. Current challenges, economic strain. High youth unemployment fuels frustration. Both secular and Islamist parties struggle to deliver reforms, risking democratic backsliding. Constitutional crisis. President Said's 2021 suspension of Parliament raises questions about the durability of Tunisia's consensus model and the balance between executive authority and representative institutions. Saudi Arabia blends absolute monarchy with an advisory consultative council. Though there are no elections, limited consultative mechanisms coexist with religious legitimacy. King's sovereignty constitutional basis. The 1992 Basic Law declares the king rules in accordance with Quran and Sunnah, concentrating legislative, executive, and judicial powers in the monarch. Royal decrees. All major laws and reforms issue by decree. No elected legislature exists to draft or veto legislation. Consultative Assembly, Majlis Shūrā. Composition. A 150-member advisory council appointed by the king, including clerics, technocrats, and tribal leaders. Functions. Reviews, draft laws, budget proposals, and national plans. Submits recommendations, but lacks binding authority. Religious oversight. The Council's Islamic Affairs Committee vets measures against Sharia principles, advising the monarch on religious compatibility. Local municipal councils, elected councils, since 2005. Half-appointed, half-elected bodies at the municipality level handle urban planning, infrastructure, and social services. Voting is restricted. Men and, since 2015, women over 21 with ministry approval can vote. Limitations. Councils have no power over security, education curricula, or major budgets. They serve primarily consultative and service monitoring roles. Religious Institutions Council of Senior Scholars, appointed clerical body issuing binding fatwas on state policy and social issues. Their opinions shape government decisions on education, media, and public morality. Human rights and reform. Recent vision. 2030 reforms introduced limited social freedoms, such as public entertainment, under the premise of diversifying the economy while preserving core religious values. Iran's system merges republican elements with clerical rule, Elected bodies operate under the ultimate authority of a supreme jurist. Supreme leader's authority. Constitutional role. The supreme leader, Rahbar, holds final say over military, judicial, and media affairs, appoints heads of key institutions, judiciary, state broadcasting, guardian council. Vilayat al-Faqih. Doctrine grants the jurist authority to guide the ummah in absence of the hidden imam, legitimizing clerical oversight of all state matters. Elected institutions, president and parliament, citizens vote for president every 4 years, and the Islamic Consultative Assembly, modules. Legislation originates in the modules and requires presidential assent. Guardian Council, 12 members, 6 clerics, 6 jurists, appointed by the supreme leader and judiciary vet candidates, and legislation for conformity with Sharia and the Constitution. Assembly of experts, clerical electorate, an 88-member body of elected clerics tasked with overseeing and, if necessary, dismissing the supreme leader. Elections are indirect, and candidates are pre-approved by the Guardian Council. Checks and balances. In theory, this assembly can hold the leader accountable. In practice, its close clerical alignment limits adversarial oversight. Local councils and the Expediency Discernment Council, city councils, fully elected bodies manage municipal affairs, urban planning, health services, education oversight, within limits set by central authorities. Expediency Council. Appointed advisory body resolves disputes between modules and Guardian Council, balancing Republican legislation with clerical oversight. In many Muslim-majority states, non-state actors, NGOs, grassroots movements, and independent media have become vital interlocutors between rulers and ruled, shaping policy and public opinion where formal institutions fall short. NGO networks and advocacy. Example: Egypt's Hisham Mubarak Law Center provides legal aid on human rights cases, petitions the Constitutional Court, and trains lawyers in freedom of expression litigation. Their success in overturning arbitrary detentions demonstrates how civil society expertise can check executive overreach. Example: Pakistan's Aurat Foundation mobilizes women voters through awareness campaigns, lobbies for electoral reforms, e.g., reserved seats, and monitors polling stations. Their monitoring reports push the Election Commission to improve transparency and gender inclusion. Independent media and watchdog journalism, digital platforms. Outlets like Middle East Eye, Al Arabi Al Jadid, and local YouTube channels provide real-time analysis, investigative reporting, and citizen testimonies, bypassing state broadcasters. Impact. Exposés on corruption, human rights abuses, or election fraud spark public outcry and sometimes prompt parliamentary inquiries or judicial probes, illustrating media's role as a de facto fourth estate. Religious NGOs and faith-based mobilization organizations such as Islamic Relief and Al Baraka Trust translate charitable networks into political leverage, negotiating with authorities for regulatory reforms, disaster response funding, and social service delivery contracts. Their grassroots presence in remote areas builds trust that formal parties often lack, enabling them to rally communities for voter registration drives and public policy consultations. The rise of smartphones and social networks has empowered a new generation of Muslims to engage politically, organizing campaigns, coordinating protests, and even piloting e-voting experiments. Hashtag campaigns and online petitions. Women's March Cairo, Kashmir referendum, and Vote for Change demonstrate how digital hashtags can galvanize diasporic support, frame policy debates, and pressure governments to amend electoral laws or suspend unjust ordinances. Online petitions on platforms like Avayaz or Change.org collect millions of signatures, compelling parliaments to debate issues ranging from blasphemy law reform to climate action. E-voter registration and remote voting pilots. Indonesia's mobile registration, SMS-based voter enrollment in remote provinces, reduced disenfranchisement by 15% in the 2019 elections. Tunisia's internet voting trials. Limited trials for expatriate Tunisians used secure blockchain proxies, boosting turnout among the diaspora by 40% in municipal referenda, demonstrating digital ballots' potential to widen participation. Youth-led digital movements. Morocco's number Mout Marida. Young activists used Instagram Live to host town hall discussions on unemployment and housing, gathering public feedback that influenced the 2021 municipal platforms. Malaysia's Undi Rosak, Spoil Your Vote campaign highlighted disenchantment with party politics, leading to a 5% rise in invalid ballots, but also sparking parliamentary debates on electoral reform. Challenges of online engagement, misinformation, and bots. Automated troll farms amplify polarizing content. Citizens must navigate propaganda, deepfakes, and smear campaigns. Digital divide. Rural and elderly populations often lack reliable internet or digital literacy, risking the creation of a two-tier electorate. State surveillance. Governments deploy social media monitoring and censorship, e.g., throttling, VPN bans, to quell digital dissent, forcing activists to adopt encryption and anonymity tools. As we conclude our journey through 8 facets of Islam's democratic experiments, it's time to weave these lessons into a coherent strategy, one that honors divine guidance while empowering the people. Foundation. Honor divine law. Constitutional supremacy of Sharia. Enshrine core Islamic values, justice, consultation, welfare, into a written constitution that guides legislation without autocracy. Guardianship Council. Convene a diverse council of qualified jurists, ulama, to review proposed laws, ensuring they don't conflict with inviolable texts while respecting popular mandates. Institutional design, balance and accountability. Elected legislature. A representative parliament with clear powers to draft and amend laws, budget oversight, and the authority to summon and question executive leaders. Executive with checks. A president or prime minister accountable to parliament, bound by a constitutional oath, and subject to judicial review. Independent judiciary. Courts empowered to interpret both civil statutes and Sharia principles with transparent appointment processes to prevent politicization. Mechanisms of participation. Local shūrā councils, grassroots bodies at municipal and provincial levels where citizens consult on local policies, blending tradition with modern decentralization. Digital platforms, secure e-voting for referenda, online citizen assemblies, and mobile feedback apps to broaden participation, paired with offline town halls to include the digitally marginalized. Civil society and media legal aid networks, expand community legal centers to uphold rights and mediate disputes before they escalate. Free press protections. Constitutional guarantees for independent journalism with anti-defamation laws balanced to prevent hate speech without muzzling critique. Faith-based NGOs leverage mosque and religious school networks for voter education, social services, and watchdog roles. Education and youth engagement, civic curriculum. Integrate lessons on constitutional rights, shūrā theory, and democratic values into religious and secular schools alike. Youth councils and fellowships empower Generation Z through leadership programs, internships in parliament, and grants for community initiatives, nurturing future statespersons. Economic and social justice, equitable welfare, institutionalize zakāh and waqf distributions via transparent channels, enact anti-poverty programs that reduce the allure of extremist promises. Labor rights and opportunity, guarantee fair employment laws, vocational training, and entrepreneurship support to address economic grievances that polarize societies. Ethics and oversight, anti-corruption bodies, independent commissions with Sharia-inspired integrity codes empowered to investigate and sanction officials. Human Rights Charter, a bill guaranteeing personal freedoms, speech, belief, assembly, framed within an Islamic ethos of dignity, karama, and mercy, rahma. Regional and global cooperation inter-Ummah forums, regular assemblies of Muslim democracies to share best practices, mediate disputes, and uphold election standards. International observers. Invite neutral monitors for major elections to enhance credibility and deter fraud.